the biggest thing that happened this week was the Myles Garrett trade request. Everyone's talked about it. I'm sure all 31 other teams are trying to figure out how to get this guy in the doors at their facilities. And, he pretty much came out, was it yesterday on NFL Media Row or NFL Row? And, he was doing a bunch of interviews, but the one that I watched was with Mina Kimes. And he basically said as much, and I think he's reiterated it a few times. He only wants to go to a contender, right? So he's narrowing down the list to like 10 teams. And obviously, we're in a position as Lions where we're one of those teams that may be able to have our shot at Myles Garrett. And I'm wondering for you, is that a call that we should make, in your opinion?
It's definitely a call that we should make. You should never just let this go by without picking up the phone. And I want Myles Garrett. Who wouldn't, right? The guy's an animal. He's up there for Defensive Player of the Year every year. What is it? 6-time All-Pro. Just crazy, crazy defensive end that they don't grow on trees, right? However, I don't think I'm willing to trade for him. Like if I'm Brad Holmes, I don't think so. And had this year gone differently, maybe my tune might have changed. But we just watched our entire defense get decimated by injury. Like legit decimated to where we couldn't stop Washington no matter how bad we tried in that playoff game. And we want to give up assets and or players to get a superstar opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, which would be great. But what happens to the rest of the team, right? Like, do we have that secondary depth that we desperately need? So we're not starting, with all due respect, Kindle Vildor at the end of the year. Do we give away Jack Campbell, a linebacker who has grown and become a really good player after a second year? Is he part of the trade? And, of course I'd be willing to give up like maybe a first or two. I don't know, maybe. But anything past that, it's like I don't think so, man. Like we need them.
Interesting. Man, it's hard for me, right? Because like there's one side where like I get 100% where you're coming from, but then there's this other side where, dude, Myles Garrett, Aiden Hutchinson is something that I just don't know how the other 31 teams in the league, and obviously we don't pay all other 31, but whoever was on the schedule next year, those other, teams, I mean, I don't know how they prepare for that, to be honest. Like, I don't. And I think that, man, to pair those two and where that can propel us, it would be something that it would be amazing, right? And, then you got to, you take into like how you were talking about the injuries, we also have to take into effect the fact that, we lost Aaron Glenn. We have a new defensive coordinator, so things will be a little bit different this year. Is it going to be a better defense? Is it going to be a worse defense? Is it just going to be the same? We don't know. It's all in front of us, right? But, I mean, to add Myles Garrett to the Detroit Lions, I don't think it's something that if we had the opportunity, if he were to – if the conversations were had where he says, hey, I want to come to Detroit, and Brad Holmes didn't do everything that he could to secure that deal, I think I would be pretty upset about that, man. Like, obviously there's a line that I'm not going to go to. I think there's some untouchables in my opinion. Like, there's 3 players that are just absolutely off the table, and it would be Penei Sewell, Aiden Hutchinson, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, those guys are untouchable. Outside of those, like, would it suck to see a Brian Branch go, a Kirby Joseph go, a Jack Campbell go? Yes. But to replace those players with a guy like Myles Garrett, I mean, bro, I don't know how many times an opportunity like that presents itself.
So, and I'm envisioning the same thing you are, right? Like, Hutch on one side, Myles on the other. That, like, it makes you want to smile thinking about it, right? Like, that's a football beautiful thing, right? But I don't want to get lost in the thought of how good that part would be without recognizing, like, our future, right? And I say this full well knowing that Brad Holmes has killed the draft so far in his Lions career, and I trust him with whatever picks he has, but I also don't want to hamstring our defense and everybody wants. And I know that's weird to say when you're talking about trading for Myles Garrett, but and he's a great player, and I'm not taking anything away. And I know this is like going against the grain with this opinion, but that's one guy, right? Like, how much are we giving up? That's really what it comes down to. Like, Brian Branch is an all-pro safety, as is Kirby Joseph. You know, I mean, Jack Campbell could be a Pro Bowl linebacker someday. So you're giving up that plus a potential other Jack Campbell or other cornerback that we desperately need, or a D tackle that can cover for Levi Onwuzurike when he's not available, right? Like, these are guys that we were missing this year that we needed. And yes, we were also missing a defensive end. But I don't know, man. It really all comes down to how much they're asking. And Cleveland's not in a good spot, bro. Like, they're going to ask a lot. And Myles requesting the trade lessens that a teeny tiny bit. It takes away a little bit of leverage from Cleveland, which works out well for us and all the other teams going for him. But man, like, I don't know how much I'm willing to give up. Like, it can't be a crazy Luka Doncic type deal where we're giving up the farm. You know, I don't know. So,
okay, according to what I've read and heard, you know, I think it came out the other day. An unnamed GM said it's not going to take 3 first-rounders, right? You know, it may take 2 first-rounders and something. What would it take for you? Because for me, I'll give them the 3 firsts. If I can keep all my players and give them the 3 firsts, I really don't care. Like, we're at a point, and I understand what you're saying with like the depth or whatever, but like we're at a point where we really don't. We need to be really selective on what we're adding. Like, depth is always great, but when you're able to add a player like Myles Garrett, you can fill in the gaps in other ways through free agency. Like, this isn't a midseason acquisition, right? We have so many other options of how to fill out this roster. And, bro, if they want 3 first-round picks, give it to them. Like, Brad Holmes has found all pros in the 2nd and 3rd round, right? Like,
yes,
in the 4th round.
But we've also found huge players in the 1st round, right? Like Gibbs. And I know we're not picking that high anymore.
Right,
and that's
exactly.
an important part to recognize.
Very
that we
important.
are picking late 1st round, and I realize that. But like, my list of untouchables includes yours, but I would also throw Gibbs on there. I would throw Goff on. I'm not giving them Gibbs for anything. I saw some Browns fans recommending that, and I'm like, kick rocks. And I like Myles Garrett a lot, but we saw how crazy Gibbs is, right? Like, I don't want to move. I would be heartbroken if we did that. You know, like, that would be really hard to stomach, even getting Myles Garrett back. So, I mean, I'll answer your question. What would it take?
Right.
Would I do 3 firsts? Personally, no. I would do 2 and maybe like a 4th. You know, but we're different, right? Like, that's kind of where I'm at. 3 first-round picks is crazy value, even if you expect to win for the next few years and you expect to be later. I mean, look, if that happened, I'm not mad, but I would be a little like, okay, like, I hope. And here's what I always think about too. I always think about, what if you give all that for Garrett and he gets hurt? Then what, right? And now you're kind of stuck in a spot where you didn't get anything and you lost your picks, and maybe he comes back less effective. Like, I always think about stuff like that, because that's something that, like, it gets lost in translation a lot, but like, that's a realistic thing. Like, Hutch got hurt this year, and look how much it hurt, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's also something that you can't predict. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't like to do business on the what ifs, but I understand the point. The one thing, there's a flip side to the coin, right? So, and for me, it's not so much the injury aspect and the what if. It's more so, okay, we bring Myles Garrett in, let's say. We have to re-sign him, which means even if we only, like, and this is where I was getting at. So we give up 3 first-round picks to get Myles Garrett. We keep our players. He comes here. We have to re-sign him. We're going to lose one of those players anyways that's due for these, that's coming up on these contracts, right? And listen, with or without Myles Garrett, that's a conversation that Lions fans need to get very comfortable with. And it's something that we'll touch on moving forward throughout the offseason, I'm sure into next season. It's going to get a little weird with these contracts coming up, all hitting at the same time. It's been great for us now because they're all cheap and they're part of the rebuild, but this is the cost of being good at drafting and hitting on players and, consecutive drafts or in the same draft. They're all due for their money at the same time. So it's going to be a little weird, and I think us as Lions fans need to get comfortable with the fact that some of these players are going to leave via trade, via free agency. It's going to happen. So with that thought in mind, though, that's where I'm kind of at. That's why I'm kind of like, whatever, dude, if we can bring Myles Garrett in. We know what he is. We've seen what he's done. His resume speaks for itself. Sign him. And if we got to say goodbye to one of those guys, it is what it is, man. Defense wins championships at the end of the day. And Brad Holmes has proven he can do it. So why can't he do it again? What's stopping him from finding more guys to replace him? I love Kirby Joseph, man. I wish he could be a Lion for the rest of his career, and he very well may be. But if he's not, I still have faith in Brad Holmes to be able to go ahead and find a replacement for him, like just how he did when he brought him in.
Yeah, and I like the cap space point that you brought up because that's further hindering our depth, right? Like that means that now, okay, great, you lost the draft picks, which means you can't draft players in the first round, let's say, but now you're also losing other picks who are good, which is even more valuable than a first round pick, right? Now you're losing those guys because you have to pay Myles Garrett upwards of $35 million a year, which is definitely what he's going to demand. I think that's where like Nick Bosa's in the range right now. And where does this money come from, right? And like keep in mind too, we just re-signed Ali McNeil. We just re-signed Monty. We got all these great players because we fit in the draft. And you're right, like Brad Holmes' upcoming drafts are arguably even more important than the ones he took to build a team. Because you're right, we can't hang on to every good player we have. That's business. We can't afford it. So, do you let these guys walk? You have to, but then you also have to replace them with, equal talent at least to have a shot. And we saw that our team last year wasn't good enough. So we have to be even better. So I know people are dying on the Myles Garrett hill because they want that pass rush so desperately, and I'm with them 100%. I just don't know if it's for that caliber of a player because he's so expensive.
Well, and not only that, we have to also take into consideration the fact that Aiden Hutchinson is due, and that bill's coming due quickly. So how much are we willing to invest in the defensive line, specifically the defensive end? Like you just said, we gave Aleem a big contract last year. Hutch is coming due. If Myles Garrett comes in, he's going to want some money. Now, he did say it's not about the money for him. Would he be willing to take less to go to a contender and try to go for a ring? Those are the conversations that are going to be had between the teams and the agents. My guess would be no, because someone else is just going to give him a bag regardless. But it all depends what he wants to do. But regardless, man, you're talking about, what, $70 million annually at the defensive end position, both left and right? That's a lot of money. So, yeah, man, it's not for us to figure out. It's just for us to sit here and talk about, right? It's up to those people. And look, all other teams in the league are having this conversation, which is why you and I are talking about it. I think it's up to the people who make a lot more money than us to figure it out. But if it's a realistic possibility to bring him in and Brad Holmes thinks they can do it, I have faith in Brad Holmes to replenish this team through the draft the same way he's built it. And bring him in, and we'll see what the future holds.
And I'll say it with you. I mean, trust in Brad. That guy has my full trust. I should get a shirt that says that. Whatever he does, I'm with it. If we land Myles Garrett tomorrow, I'll be celebrating with you. I promise. But I'll be a little nervous because that's the way I'm looking at it. And honestly, just knowing how Brad Holmes operates, I don't see it because this has been a Max Crosby conversation for 2 years. The guy might as well have a locker in our locker room by how much we talk about him and how badly we want him. It just never happened. I don't think Holmes is the type of GM to just make those splashes like that. He's not shown that. So I'd be shocked if it happened. I mean, I'm hoping for it because I think that would be awesome to watch as a football fan and a Lions fan. And they would just wreak havoc on that line, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. So just real quick, just some numbers before we move on. So Myles Garrett's cap hit next year is 19.7 million, and in 2026 it's 20.3 million. So whatever, 20 million each year. I mean, it's affordable for a player
It's
of
not
his
bad.
caliber over the
Yeah.
next 2 years. The thing is, after those 2 years, what's going to happen? And with his comments on not, money not being the sole motivation and yada yada, does that mean that, hey, I'm willing to not talk about an extension until that time comes? You can get me for 2 years at, a bargain for a player like me, and then let's go for it, all in over the next 2 seasons, and we'll cross those bridges when they come. I don't know, but I think at 20 million over the next 2 years, I think you got to do whatever you can, whatever it
Yeah,
takes.
but for the deal to be worth it, with you giving up that much, you have to re-sign him. Like those draft picks that you're giving up and those players or whatever would not be worth it if he's only here for a couple seasons. You have to re-sign him.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point too. I mean, I'm almost of the mind where if you think that bringing in Myles Garrett gets us to the Super Bowl next year, like, do you just sell out, f them picks, and go for a ring, kind of like the Rams did in the
Yeah,
Matthew
I
Stafford
knew that
trade,
was going to come
right?
up, bro. I don't know. No, no.
So you don't, because I think,
Look,
man,
if you could guarantee a trip to the Super Bowl, is that the question?
no, but you can answer it.
All right, I'll answer your question. Man, I don't know, man. I have to say yes because we've never freaking been, dude.
That's what I was just saying. Like, I feel like the Rams, like, they hit it out the park with that Stafford deal, bro.
And that was exactly what they needed. But man, and you know what? The Rams are still successful. So
Bingo. That's where I was. That's where I was
know,
leading
I
up
know.
to. Right? Is they had the one down season, and then they were
Yes.
able to retool
Okay,
without the first round picks. Without the
In that
first
case,
round
I'm a
picks.
yes. I mean, and look, maybe I'm not changing my opinion. I mean, maybe I'm just looking at this from a glass half empty perspective. I just think a lot can go wrong giving up that much for this player, and it doesn't guarantee you anything, right? So, man, yeah, if you told me we'd make a Super Bowl, yeah, I'd feel comfortable with it.